You have probably ripped this plant out of your yard and tossed it in the trash. And you may have thrown away omega-3 fatty acids right along with it. Not from a bottle, from a little succulent weed that grows at your feet. Meanwhile, heart disease is still the #1 killer in America. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says someone dies every 34 seconds from cardiovascular disease. So here is the question. If a heart-friendly plant keeps volunteering in our yards, why are we trained to destroy it? The plant is Purslane. It has smooth red stems and thick, paddle-shaped leaves. It shows up in sidewalk cracks, garden beds, and lawns that get stressed in summer. In many countries, purslane is a vegetable you buy at the market. In Mexico, you may hear it called verdolagas. In parts of the Mediterranean, it shows up in simple salads. Here, it is treated like a problem. University extension pages explain how to identify it and which weed killers work best. Lawn services promise to remove it. Grocery stores rarely sell it fresh. So what happened? Did purslane become useless? Or did we build a system with no place for a plant you can grow for free? To answer that, we have to open a strange little archive, not in a museum, in a medical journal. On September 25, 1986, a researcher named Artemis Simopoulos published a short note in the New England Journal of Medicine. The headline was plain. Purslane was a terrestrial source of omega-3 fatty acids. Just a few lines. But for the right reader, it mattered. Omega-3 fats were becoming a major topic for heart health and inflammation. And here was a leafy plant you could find in a driveway crack. That should have made purslane famous. Instead, most of us kept pulling it up. Why? Because purslane breaks the rules of modern food. It does not ship well. It bruises and wilts fast, and it can look slimy if it sits too long. It also refuses to grow in neat, uniform rows. It sprawls, branches, and drops seeds. That is great in a home garden. It is bad for industrial farming and grocery shelves. And if a plant is hard to standardize, it is hard to brand. Now add an American force that has nothing to do with nutrition, the perfect lawn. After World War II, the suburban lawn became a symbol. Green, even, weed-free. An entire industry grew around that image, from grass seed to herbicides to monthly service plans. Purslane, with its red stems and creeping habit, became the enemy. Not because it was deadly, but because it ruined the look. Once a plant gets labeled a weed, a second thing happens. It gets separated from memory. People stop passing down recipes. Kids stop seeing it on plates. The only stories left are about how to kill it. And that is a tragedy, because purslane has been known as food for a very long time. Ancient writers in the Mediterranean described it as a familiar summer herb. Over centuries, tastes shifted toward cultivated crops that fit big farms and big markets. Self-seeding plants started to look like neglect. Purslane went from normal to embarrassing. That status label can outlive the facts. Here is the turn. Purslane is not just edible. It is unusually nutritious in ways that matter as we age. Researchers have reported that 100 grams of fresh purslane can contain roughly 300 to 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, the plant form of omega-3. Some reports also note tiny amounts of EPA, a type of omega-3 we usually associate with fish. Now, let us be careful. Purslane is not salmon. It will not replace medical care. And no single food prevents heart attacks. But when a leafy green in your yard carries measurable omega-3, it changes the story. It turns a weed into a resource. And that is not the only surprise. In 2005, Simopoulos and colleagues published another paper describing purslane as a plant source of omega-3 and melatonin. Melatonin is a molecule many people associate with sleep. In plants, it is often discussed as part of the stress response. The point is not that purslane is a sleeping pill. The point is that this weed has chemistry sophisticated enough to catch the attention of researchers more than once. Then, in 2014, a large review pulled together what different studies had reported, from fatty acids to vitamins to oxalates. And in July of 2024, a University of Florida Extension article went even further in plain language. It called Purslane a reigning champion of vitamins A and E among vegetables, while also noting it is often labeled a noxious weed in Florida. 2 stories, 1 plant. So why does the weed story win? Because the weed story fits the system. The food story does not. Here is what the system prefers. A product that looks the same every time. A product with a long shelf life. A product that can be priced, packaged, and promoted. Purslane is the opposite. It appears without permission. It changes shape. It can be harvested in minutes. It does not need a brand to exist. And that is where the quiet conflict lives. If you cannot profit from it, you have less reason to promote it. If you cannot control it, you have more reason to label it messy. And if your business is lawn perfection, a creeping plant is a threat. But wait, it gets more complicated. Purslane comes with real cautions that most viral videos skip. First, purslane can be high in oxalates, natural compounds also found in spinach. For most people, that is not a problem. But if you have had kidney stones or certain kidney issues, it can matter. Second, the purslane in your yard may have been sprayed. When a plant is treated as a weed, people fight it with chemicals. So the safest purslane to eat is not the patch in a parking lot, not the plant beside a road, and not the weed in a lawn that gets sprayed every month. If you want purslane as food, the smart move is to grow it intentionally, or source it from a market where it is sold as food. Now step back and look at the pattern. This is not only about purslane, it is about how modern life trains us to outsource food and health. When you are younger, outsourcing feels convenient. When you are older, it can start to feel risky. Prices rise, labels get confusing, and your body becomes less forgiving. That is why small, practical nutrition wins matter. So what would it look like to take a little control back? It starts with knowing what purslane is and what it is not. Purslane is a summer annual that forms low-growing mats of succulent leaves. It thrives in heat. It survives drought. It can regrow from small pieces if you leave them on damp soil. That is why gardeners complain it is hard to get rid of. But that same toughness is exactly what makes it useful for people who do not want a high-maintenance garden. It even uses a water-saving system called CAM photosynthesis, a strategy shared by many desert plants. That is one reason it stays alive when other greens fade in July. So here is the uncomfortable question. If purslane is so resilient, why did we decide to grow fragile greens that demand constant water, constant shipping, and constant refrigeration? Because resilience is not profitable. Predictability is. And that brings us to the real lesson for anyone over 50. The goal is not to turn your yard into a pharmacy. The goal is to rebuild your relationship with what counts as food and to do it safely. If you are curious about purslane, start with identification. There are look-alike plants and some are not edible. If you are not 100% sure, do not eat it. Second, source matters. Choose purslane that you grow yourself without sprays or that comes from a market where it is sold as food. Third, preparation matters. Many people enjoy it raw in small amounts for a crisp, slightly sour bite. Others cook it into soups and eggs where its natural thickness can make food feel more filling. Fourth, moderation matters. Eat it as part of a varied diet, not as a daily cure. And if you have a history of kidney stones, ask your clinician about high-oxalate foods before you make it a habit. Now, the final surprise. Purslane is not just a weed you can eat, it is a mirror. It shows you how quickly a useful thing can be pushed into the trash category, just because it does not fit our image of what food is supposed to look like. In the beginning, I said you may have thrown omega-3 away without knowing it. Now you know how that can be true. A tiny medical note in 1986 pointed to Purslane as a land source of omega-3. A modern extension article calls it a vitamin champion, and at the same time, weed control guides still teach you how to destroy it. One plant, two stories. So the next time you see Purslane in a crack in the sidewalk, do not ask how to get rid of it. Ask a better question. Who taught me that food has to come in a package? And what other useful things have I been trained to pull up and throw away? If you found this fascinating, hit subscribe for more stories like this.